Hi, welcome to the Bitcoin Brew. I am joined by Karin Roelke. She is a new member of the Texas Blockchain Council, and she has dropped so many valuable gems since I've been chatting with her since she joined. And I wanted to invite her on and ask her all about what she's knowledgeable in: trading, DAOs, the whole nine yards. Don't forget, this is for edutainment purposes only. And let's get started. Karin, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Amy. Super excited and just really incredible work that you're doing on the Bitcoin Brew, but also just in general, Texas Blockchain Council. Learned so much. So grateful to be here.
Well, thank you. You just joined us this month in October. Tell me, what was your motivation? What made you join us as an individual partner?
You know, what's interesting is I would encourage everyone to actually just go out there and look at the events going around in town. I think Texas Blockchain Council is one of the most active in terms of having a lot of interest outside of mining. I know you guys represent a lot of mining interest, Bitcoin mining interest, things of that nature. But what I found was interesting is it's kind of the perfect melding of policy and kind of where things are going in government, but regulation, but also just different ideas are always open and welcomed as well. And so the first event I attended was you had a couple of local congressmen. Please remind me of their names.
It was probably Tan Parker and Giovanni Capriglione.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And I came to one of those, and I wasn't a member yet, but I was just very impressed with the amount of transparency that the speakers were giving in relation to the questions that were being asked, very knowledgeable questions from the audience. Everybody who is a member is very knowledgeable about blockchain. And then the other thing I enjoyed was that the next meeting that I went to, which sealed the deal for me joining, was that you had a few attorneys from Gary Reed. And I was very impressed, to be in a room and to be able to ask questions for attorneys that are hundreds and hundreds of dollars billable, to give their candid personal opinions on what they think, where regulation is going, how they have advised clients before. I just was very impressed. And so I was like, okay, this is kind of the missing piece for what I'm trying to do in terms of knowledge. And also being around a community of people that really want to see mass adoption in crypto and have those ideals move forward. So that's why I joined, and I'm very happy to join. And thank you for having me again.
Oh, my pleasure. Derek Kleinman was sort of a surprise guest at that Gray Reed panel because he was the SEC. He's with the SEC, and he gave us a lot of insight and valuable information. And that's where you and I connected.
Yes.
And when you were in the audience, you asked a really poignant question about a DAO. And before we go there, I was hoping that you could tell our viewers, what is a DAO?
Sure. So DAO, actually spelled DAO, is a decentralized autonomous organization. And so to think of it in a very simple terms of how I could explain it is it's a group of individuals that actually have a common interest, and they kind of organize themselves around that common interest, but their organization isn't in a regular corporate structure. And what do I mean by that? It means they're not in a regulated structure that you and I are already familiar with, meaning a traditional nonprofit or a traditional company, which would be a CEO, a board of directors, a president, vice presidents, marketing director. Those types of roles are in a very traditional setting. And what DAOs do is they kind of take those traditional roles and they leave it up to the community, and they leave it up to the community to kind of direct the way in which the organization is going to go. And they can do that through voting or governance. And so I'm kind of getting a little off track here. So that's the organization part. The autonomous part is that it is actually a lot of times written into code. There are actual smart contracts when you set up a DAO, depending on what kind of DAO you set up, and things are changing, evolving all the time. But those rules or the smart contracts actually help with the governing and the voting and kind of the direction of how to do things like deploy capital or how we're going to reward team members or contributors to the DAO, depending on what the common interest is. And so because it's controlled by rules that is on the blockchain, it's very, very transparent. It's very transparent. Having a hidden agenda in a DAO, whether people argue that you can or not, if you just go by the rules that are written in the blockchain or the smart contract, it's amazing because I think a lot of people look and crave for transparency when they're a part of an organization. And then decentralized meaning that it has no governing authority. It is not regulated by any one particular authority. And I think that is what attracts a lot of people to the idea of DAOs. And so what I like to say is DAOs are kind of the utopia of what an organization could be. And meaning that for many years, there has always been this idea of how do we give power and authority to the many who are contributing to an organization. And I think it's called the principal agent dilemma. It's a philosophical term that I learned actually while researching DAOs. And in the principal agent dilemma, it's the many are represented by just a few. And do the few always make the best decisions for the many? Well, I think we've seen in corporate America time and time again that is actually not true. So, and so because of that, there's just this huge rush right now to create DAOs, to organize, to try to figure out how to use these models in terms of giving organizations and causes the best ability to succeed and thrive with a more stakeholder value, meaning all the members actually have a say. And because all the members have a say, they actually are more passionate about it. They are more invested.
I get it. So kind of chicken and egg question. It sounds like blockchain technology had to come first.
Yes.
And then someone figured out a way to use that technology to make these autonomous organizations.
Yes. So the whole movement of being decentralized, and I think what's amazing is that whether people do their research or not, many will say that Bitcoin was the first technical DAO, because what you had is you actually had Bitcoin with the idea that it was going to be decentralized. It was going to be outside and autonomous of any authority. And so you already have the decentralized part and the autonomous part. And then the organization part is that all the validators, all the people who are part of the proof of work network, they are part of the organization, but they can't actually change any of the code. They can't go back in there and they can't change any of the rules. And so, but they are a part of it, you know, and they're rewarded for it. But because of that, that idea of not being able to be incorrupt, being incorruptible, being, you know, transparent, a lot of those tenements from Bitcoin actually translated very well. And then historically, there was it was actually called the DAO. it was Ethereum based. It was the very first DAO. And what happened there is they raised I don't know the exact amounts, so forgive me because I just have numbers swimming around in my head all the time. But they raised a ton of Ethereum. And you can Google it, you can read about it. But what happened is there was an exploit. And because the technology is still growing and things are susceptible to things like exploits and hacks and things like that, it actually lost a lot of money. And so, but why was something that was so new and so exciting and pretty much untested, why did it reach, you know, tens of millions of dollars? You know, it wasn't a small amount. It wasn't like 3 million or 5 million. I think it was 37 million or something. So why did that happen? And because it was the first, no one had ever done it before. People would think that's crazy. Oh, I just started this internet group and it raised tens of millions of dollars. It was because people are really thirsty for, and I'll keep going back to it, transparency and ownership and being a stakeholder. And that's what I think DAOs can give people. And so that's why I think it had such incredible success, even though the technology was very new.
I see. Now, forgive me because I'm learning about DAOs. It's not in my wheelhouse. So if you want to join a DAO, you would put fiat into this system, you would get a token, and then that makes you part of this organization, gives you voting voice. Is that true? Is that simplified very much?
So that's a good question, because this is where I think the next phase, an evolution. So many people, there are different types of DAOs, and I'll circle back to answer your question. So there are many different types of DAOs. Most of them, people that have familiarity with crypto, know things about like Compound, Yearn, Finance, MakerDAO. They're very familiar with DAOs that have a financial component where you have a stake inside of the protocol, and you're rewarded based on how the protocol does. So, I'll use Uniswap for an example. Uniswap has a governance token. You can actually have certain voting rights within Uniswap that would direct the swap, the DEX. It would actually kind of direct things where members are rewarded a certain percentage. I mean, you can actually vote on those things. And so because of that, a lot of people who were very familiar with DeFi, who were very familiar with Web3 and already have a background, started flocking to a lot of these financial protocol DAOs, which makes sense because a lot of times people look at crypto as a speculative asset. And then what happened is there's this slow evolution of DAOs where they started figuring out that, okay, because we want to solve these issues of things like transparency, like creating more stakeholders, giving people the ability to be vested in a cause, we're going to start organizing around ideas, common interest. And so common interest being, I will just use some of the things that you've heard about in the news. So Constitution DAO was very famous. Pretty much a group of people got onto Discord. They were kind of joking, but kind of not, about buying the Constitution. And so what's amazing about Constitution DAO is they were able to raise an incredible amount of money in a very short period of time. And, when you get together with a group of friends and you're like, hey, why don't we buy the Constitution? That sounds very wacky, actually. But what's incredible is that they were able to raise $47 million within just a few weeks.
Wow.
And they were beat by somebody else, a multi-billionaire beat them on the bid, but they were still able to accomplish something that no one else has accomplished before and bring up all these questions on their how do we govern, how do we move forward in refunding people, how do we move as a community around causes, but being able to be transparent on chain, use a fundraising platform. I mean, there's just so many things that came out of that. I think it was a great example of all the things that we can do and all the things that might need just a little tweak and improvement on moving forward. Some of the things that were talked about during that time were things like how do we organize to protect our members? And I think that's huge in legislation right now. How do we refund people if we're unsuccessful? What is a governance token versus just being a pure fundraiser? So I think all those issues and questions came up, and what we're seeing is this evolution to really focusing on what the problems are within DAOs now. So we already have the framework. Hey, I have a really good idea. I want to organize quickly. I want to be global. I want to be transparent. I want to have autonomy, and I want to be decentralized, and I want to be able to have the most amount of impact possible. And that's the beginning. And then where it goes is oh, wow, now I need a structure. If I'm in another country, we might not need a structure of either 501c3 or LLC. If I'm in the United States, what does the SEC say about my tokens? Can I issue governance tokens and still have some sort of control? Because I think that's where things are going now. So when you start a DAO, it's very exciting, but then you got to figure out the nitty gritty of how am I going to manage this in a way that protects its members, in a way that protects the cause, and in a way that doesn't, I would think everyone in the DAO space is very excited because you don't want to give DAOs a bad name because we're kind of on the trajectory. We're on the forefront. We're moving forward. And so figuring out how do you want to construct it. Now there's a lot of amazing programmers and there's a lot of amazing platforms. I would just suggest everybody to, if you're excited about something, a cause, and you want to organize around it, go out and you start researching platforms. You start looking at things like a juice box. You start looking at things like an XDAO, an Aragon, DAO House. Please don't send me hate mail if I forget somebody. And so, you start, Colony, is one too. So you start looking at how can I build in this space? And there are so many great tools out there. So I think if people just start researching, they're going to start building that confidence to realize there's a lot of tools out there. And so now you have how I'm going to set it up. Okay. And then you have to figure out, and this is why I'm being careful, is this is where I think things are kind of the next phase of DAOs is how do we want to implement it and govern? Because before it was, and you said, okay, so I just put fiat and I just buy a token and now I can vote. It's like, okay, well, yes, that was the way it was done and it was very easy. But there have been several issues, even as of late, where governance has kind of run amok, and it's a very isolated example, but I'll just use it as an example, is that the recently in the news, and if people just Google it, there's Mango Finance. They had a governance token. They were a really great platform. I actually knew a lot of people who invested into it and were excited about it. And then what happened is there was an exploit in the way the pricing worked. One person was able to financially gain all the governance tokens. I won't go into all the details because you can read about it. There's a lot of really great explanations on online about it. But they were able to gain almost all the governance tokens. The profit that they got from, I don't want to say profit, the exploit that they were able to figure out in the governance protocol, they were able to actually get like $100 million.
Oh my.
And because they were able to acquire all the governance tokens, they actually just voted themselves to be like the leader, immunity. They actually, it's funny because if you go Mango DAO voting, like if you, or Mango Finance voting, and you Google it, you're able to actually see the hacker is communicating with the founders. And they're communicating through votes, proposals, with governance tokens.
Wow.
It's like, I propose that you make us whole again. And he goes, I propose that I keep this many millions and give you this many millions. And it's going back and forth all on chain on voting. And it's incredible. It's like watching like a legal drama take place, like right there, right in front of you. And so, and that's with the financial protocol. I think it would be different if it were something like, I'm just really excited about going to the moon, like Moon DAO, which we've talked about before, but, which actually had a very successful DAO funding, and they actually did buy tickets on Blue Origin and did send people to the moon. So, but they also have a governance token, and they have, which means that you can help direct the organization. And you can help reward contributors. You can help kind of be part of what you will call like a board or a voting system within MoonDAO. And they also have a liquidity pool token, meaning that you can invest in the organization as well. So, you can structure it. I think the amazing thing is DAOs are allowing you to structure it the way you want. You just really have to be careful and go slow in the beginning if you're new to it in terms of how you want to govern. That's where I think things will really move forward is how do we want to govern the community and how do we want to govern the project?
That leads me to my next question. The only state that has any regulation for DAOs currently is Wyoming. And based on the use cases that you've shared with us and all the ones that you have in your brain swimming around.
I know.
First of all, can we regulate something that's decentralized? Are those two things, can they work together or are they, what am I trying to say?
Yeah, no. Can you have a successful DAO? I think what's interesting is that is what people in Web3 is trying to hash out right now and play nice a little bit with governments, because whether we like it or not, those of us within DAOs or the decentralized space, the government is still going to try to regulate, and so it's kind of like a David and Goliath situation where you really want David to win, but there's so many regulatory actors that want a piece of the space that it's going to be very, very, very difficult. And I think the unfortunate thing about regulation in a traditional way, because there's an argument for both, and I'll go with the argument against first. So the argument against doing something like a 501c3 or an LLC is that you are really taking away the intent of a DAO, which is the way it should be structured. So, if you have filed ever for a traditional business license, you have to list your board of directors, your president, your secretary, your treasurer. Everyone has to have a role that's more centralized. You also have to, keep lots and lots of records. Some records almost too encumbersome for the average person. Like an average person that just starts a DAO online, they don't have to hire an accountant or an attorney. They don't have to seek out paid for advice, So, you're kind of excluding a lot of those people. And you're also, you're excluding, if you're in the United States, like you said, you compared it to Wyoming. If you're outside the United States, you're also limiting the global community aspect. And what do I mean by that is a lot of times, if you are within a traditional structure, there has to be a paper trail for who buys shares or who donates. You can have anonymous donors, but, I have a traditional fundraising background, and a lot of times those things are on record, And so if those things are on record, is somebody from another part of the world really going to donate? And am I going to be able to keep track of that? Because we're just all wallet addresses. We have an anonymity, which I think is a beautiful thing. I think having anonymity within Web3 is it's incredible, because, and I'll give an example of raising money. So if you're raising money for a cause that has a lot of interest to see you fail. So for example, sex trafficking, something that's not good, not easy to talk about, something that's not fun to talk about, but there would be a lot of people that would want to see you who would want to stop that fail. There would be a lot of people who would want to see you not succeed in even saving one soul from something like that. And so anonymity, being anonymous and being an anonymous donor is a huge thing that would protect you. It would protect you, and so that's why I think being a part of traditional structure, as the government proposes, takes away some of that anonymity. And that's the unfortunate part. And, it just limits. I think it just limits, which is what traditionally I think government structures do. It just limits. On the other side of it is that I do think there needs to be some sort of protection for people who choose to organize around a common interest. And what do I mean by that? I don't think that their personal assets should have the ability to be sued by anybody. So just because you're a member of a DAO and another member of the DAO does something wrong, then maybe the whole treasury or you are personally liable, and those things have not been worked out yet. They have in a traditional, that's why you form an LLC is you protect your personal assets. That's why you form a 501c3 is you protect your personal assets. The organization takes the brunt of it and not you. Well, with a DAO, everybody, you're not under an umbrella of protection. And so because of that, there is an argument for figuring out some sort of mechanism or legal protective structure that would protect people from liability, because I can't control all actors within a DAO, if that makes any sense.
Exactly. No, it does, because that brings us back to the decentralized component.
Right.
There's no single entity that's controlling it. It's the whole group. It's very democratic kind of in that way.
Yeah.
Is that a proper use of the term?
Yes. Yeah, it is. It is. And it's not, that's what I think the government has not. And I know the Texas Blockchain Council is doing some work right now looking at how DAOs, like you're working with legislators directly to look at how you can kind of have a basis in a protective structure, but trying to preserve some things that are very, very good about DAOs, and I think that's going to be kind of what needs to be hashed out, like moving forward. And, And it's like I'm kind of like I had all this talk planned, and I don't know how we ended up here, but that's like where things are going.
Well, I appreciate that, and I wanted to, because when we met at the tax panel, and then later when we were talking on the phone, you were telling me about a super amazing project that you got involved with. A group reached out to you to help them set up a DAO. Will you tell us more about that, please?
Well, actually, I reached out to them. So I think that's what's amazing about DAOs is that if you're just this normal person that is living their normal life, but you see something that you're very passionate about and that you believe in 110%, you can actually organize and create something that could have some sort of impact. And what do I mean by that is I actually always kind of kicked the can down the road with this particular project because I said, oh, somebody else will just take care of it. Somebody else will just create the money. This particular cause has so many people that support it. There's no way that they're going to need any sort of help of mine at all whatsoever. And then what it is that there is a very well-known disputed mine in Alaska where I grew up, and it's called the Pebble Mine. And Northern Dynasty Corporation owns the mining rights to this mine. And what's incredible about this particular piece of land on the mining front is that it has the largest discovered gold deposit within like the last century. So the most amount of gold that the world has seen or will see is actually sitting on this piece of land.
Wow. So
it's very valuable. And not only that, there's copper, there's molybdenum, there's I might be mispronouncing that, but there's minerals in there. And to get that, they're actually going to have to do a huge mine. They're going to have to use water that is from the natural landscape. They're going to have to somehow figure out containment for the pollution, which if you actually look at the history of mining pollution, traditional gold mining pollution, it is a very, very poor track record for the environment, very poor. And what's interesting about it is the environmental impact will be so huge because I think a lot of people are unaware, but about 50% of the world's red salmon come from this particular exact same watershed that the mine is on. 50%. So if you look up Bristol Bay, Alaska, Pebble Mine, you will read all the facts and all the details about everything that this pertains to this mine and all the environmental impacts for it. So there's been this huge battle with the EPA and several presidential administrations, the Native Alaskan tribes, the Alaskan government, the federal government, Corps of Engineers, like the mining company. It's this huge, long, decades drawn out fight to stop this mine. And ultimately, they do believe that the EPA will somehow stop the mine based on the Clean Waters Act. And I want to trust that. I want to believe that will happen. And that's where a lot of the fundraising effort went. It went to actually promoting, like, let your voice be heard, stop the mine, let's get your senator's attention, let's get, kind of lobbying kind of type of issues. But what I would say is that, and I think a lot of people in crypto would agree, or blockchain would agree, is, do we always leave everything up to government to do absolutely the right thing and to do it in a timely manner? So the reason why I bring that up is because there is another opportunity, and this is the opportunity that I'm working on. And the opportunity presented itself as there is a particular Native Alaskan corporation called the Pedro Bay Corporation, and they have property that actually surrounds the mine, where the development would have to take place of roads in order to get any sort of machinery or equipment to the mining site. Pedro Bay has agreed, so it's the small little tribe within the Bristol Bay organizations, is that they have agreed to sell this piece of land that is integral to the development of the mine. They will sell it to a land trust. So the Conservation Fund has agreed to put together the land trust deal, and then that land will actually be held in trust forever. So there will be no development that can actually take place. You buy this land, you stop development of roads, you stop the mine. It is a private land deal. This is like a regular real estate deal that is going to kind of actually, the little guys actually beat the big guys. And the issue is that they only needed $20 million to make this thing happen. And I was like, oh, no problem. Like, like Whole Foods came out and supported Bristol Bay, like Field and Stream, like Cabela's, like all these amazing organizations came out to support it. I'm like, 20 million, no problem. It's in the bag. Oh, I call them and they're like, we're actually a few million short. The money has to be in escrow by December. We say December 15th because we want to give ourselves some time, but the actual date, if you look it up on the contracts, everything is December 31st. Okay. So the money has to be raised by December 31st of this year in order to stop this development of this mine. And what I thought was interesting is this is the perfect opportunity for a DAO, because I think almost everyone can agree that gold mining is worse than a lot of other things you could do with the land. One. Two, if we're really blockchain, if we're really crypto, we need to start coming together and using it for good. We need to start doing things. We're not just about trading or making tons of money on pumps and dumps, or, I think crypto has to have that human aspect to it, where we're starting to actually say, hey, we can unite and we can actually come together and we can actually use our funds and introduce it in a way to the world where it makes an impact. It's for good. People are familiar with giving. And, it's something that, I'm obviously very passionate about, but I think I'm also passionate about mass adoption. And this kind of leads me, I know I'm talking a lot, but this kind of leads me to the aspect of mass adoption. And the reason why I think cause giving or DAOs that are impact-based or DAOs that are cause-based have a very good opportunity. They have an opportunity to introduce blockchain and crypto. They have to the masses in a very safe way, right? Because if you and I give to a nonprofit, we're not expecting anything in return. I mean, we're expecting that feel good. Like, I feel good because I gave. I feel good because I'm doing, something positive in the world. But you and I don't expect to get back like a huge 50% gain profit on whatever we gave. No. That money to us is already gone. That money to us is already spent. And, DAOs have a way of being transparent enough where they're going to be able to inform people who give. They're going to be able to reduce organizational waste. They're going to be able to show people that they can make a difference by voting on different initiatives within the DAO based around something that they're passionate about and they really want to change. And so you take that combination. You take the combination of, I'm contributing this money. I'm not expecting anything in return. I already know it's gone. I'm very familiar with nonprofits. I'm very familiar with giving. I'm very familiar with grant making. And because of that, this is like a no-risk way to participate. But the benefit to the nonprofit or the DAO is that they're able to actually raise the funds that are needed to get the job done for what they want, And so I just see it as such a harmonious way to work together to increase familiarity and mass adoption with Web3 and decentralization and with crypto and blockchain. And it's a very exciting place and space to be in.
Yes, it is. So when we think about a DAO, what is an example that we would know about that is applicable?
So I think what's interesting is I'm going to use the example to kind of maybe compare and contrast with what a DAO is and isn't. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of times in this whole goal of mass adoption, I think we need to use examples that are very familiar with people. When people talk about crypto decentralization, blockchain miners, like a lot of people get freaked out, And so I'm going to use an example that's very applicable and very real world, if you will. And that is of the HOA. So I think majority of people have had an experience or they have known somebody who's had an experience with an HOA. So an HOA is a homeowners association. What their job is to kind of govern how the neighborhood goes. And in doing that, what they do is they have a HOA president, they have a vice president, a treasurer, a secretary, and they have meetings. Everyone goes to those meetings. You make proposals, and the HOA is in charge of kind of governing the neighborhood, what's in the best interest of the neighborhood to keep the values as high as possible and to create a most enjoyable experience. And so I think what's interesting about HOAs is that it even goes one step further in taking it out of a corporate structure because a CEO can always claim, if you use a traditional CEO example, they can always claim that they worked harder and they own more stock. And so that's why they get more say in how the company goes. So I go, okay, let's forget that example. Let's purely go with the HOA, looking at everybody contributes the same amount. Everybody has to pay their $200 or $300 or $500, or even in some places I've known $800 to $1,000. Everyone contributes. You, sir, living on the corner near the elementary school, contribute just as much as the HOA president. So all of your HOA fees are the same. So you all contribute, but do all of you have the same amount of say in moving certain propositions forward?
Not necessarily.
No, not at all. And because of the way it's constructed. And the other example, I'll delve even further into the HOA example, is I will look at things like an HOA decides to build a playground. Okay, well, we want to build a playground. This is where we want it. How do we want it to look? What amenities do we want with the playground? A lot of times, that is actually chosen, like the architect, the design firm, the builder, those are all chosen by the board. There's very little say from the general community, but yet you all contributed the same financially. And so, or what time is the pool open and what time is the pool closed? You all contributed the same financially, but you don't all have the same decision-making ability. And the reason why, that's such a great example is because I think people can understand, like, hey, I'm paying for this, but why don't I get any sort of say in the way that the neighborhood should be governed? And the only other example I'll use the HOA for is that I think when you go to meetings, things like a school board meeting, things like an HOA meeting, there's this huge social pressure to not be public. Especially with social media, somebody's going to videotape you, post you online, create a meme out of you, being that person who's complaining at the HOA or the school board meeting. And what I would say to that is, the anonymity of making proposals within a DAO is so valuable because there is no shaming there. There is no, I'm going to seek you out kind of thing there. You're just a wallet address, creating a proposal where everyone has a vote. And then the entire community gets to vote on it, whatever that proposal may be. And so that's where I think people should be excited about DAOs, because if they've ever had that feeling of, like I'm contributing, but I just don't have any say in the direction of where something's going, then, a DAO is the answer.
I love that. That's a great analogy. So tell us, how do we find you on social media? What are your handles?
Okay, so pertaining to the specific project of stopping the Pebble Mine, it's going to be www.stopgoldmining.org. The site is still running through some wallet testing, so we're going to get up and running very, very soon, so forgive us. But the Discord is open under Stop Gold Mining, and you can always Discord message me. My personal handle is on Twitter is CryptoMommy at CryptoMomLife, and you can always I'm a very open, transparent individual, so you can always, direct message me if you have any interest with the cause, the organization, any questions about DAOs. And I'm also on LinkedIn under Karin Roelke. And, the company that my husband and I have founded and have had successfully for over 12 years is whatifdm.com. So that is, who we are.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this knowledge and insight today. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you so much, Amy.
My pleasure. Hey, it's Amy with the Texas Blockchain Council. Thanks for watching. We've got more great content. Subscribe here. Like here. What am I even pointing at? Nobody knows. See you next time.